There are mistakes, and then there are mistakes. This one was the latter, the kind of mistake that causes civilizations to accidentally declare war on volcanoes, or misfile an entire solar system under lost and found. And in the case of the Galactic Confederation's Department of Habitable Planet Assessment, the error was impressively dumb. See, a low-level clerk named Splanf, whose sole qualification for interstellar cartography was that he once owned a compass, flagged Earth as low-risk, mild climate, minimally hostile. He based this classification on a weather app and a documentary featuring ducks. Ducks. No one double-checked. So naturally, the Confederation sent a diplomatic party to greet the locals. They landed, rather ungracefully, in Nevada, because someone thought Area 51 was a cultural heritage site, and not, in fact, a please don't touch anything or it will explode zone. Now, you'd think an advanced species would be prepared. They weren't. The leader of the diplomatic unit, a squid-like being named Admiral Bluth, wore 12 medals, none of which meant anything. One was for outstanding use of stationery, the others were just shiny, and that's when they saw her. She wasn't doing anything particularly impressive. She wasn't flying or levitating or even juggling explosives. She was just sitting on a plastic chair in the sun, drinking a suspiciously large cup of tea and staring into the distance like someone who'd seen things, terrible things, like taxes. The general approached her, awkwardly. He tried to speak in what he believed was Earth's universal greeting, a mixture of interpretive dance and hand gestures stolen from a cooking tutorial. She didn't move, didn't flinch, just blinked. "State your designation, local commander," he boomed. Still silence. Then, with the calm of a woman who had once fixed a clogged garbage disposal with a spoon and sheer willpower, she said, "You're standing in my shade." That was it. 6 words. The general froze. Then, slowly, and this part is important, slowly removed every single one of his medals, placed them neatly on the ground, and muttered something about unworthiness and existential collapse. The other delegates followed suit. One even bowed to her sandwich, just in case it was sentient. What followed was a series of reports titled things like "Potential Human Matriarch Detected" and "Emergency Protocol, Defer to the Girl in the Chair." Historians would later argue about the exact moment the Confederation began falling apart. Some say it was the moment she took a sip of tea. Others insist it was the eyebrow raise. But one thing was clear. Humanity, that scrappy, mildly caffeinated, emotionally unstable race from the wet rock third from the sun, had just stepped firmly into the cosmic spotlight, and they were weird. It is important to understand something about Greta Lang. She didn't want to be part of any of this. Her morning had started with 2 things, a mild headache and a microwave that had exploded, not because of metal, but because she'd stared at it too hard while frustrated. Or so the neighbors claimed. So she did what any rational person would do, made a gallon of tea, found the nearest chair in the sun, and decided not to deal with anyone. For at least 2 hours. That was when the aliens arrived. And it wasn't the big, grand kind of arrival with fireworks or musical greetings, or even a loudspeaker announcement. No, they kind of just parked, hovered awkwardly, then released a stair ramp that extended for nearly 40 feet, unnecessarily, because Admiral Bluth liked entrances. Bluth was still recovering from the psychological paper cut she'd dealt him earlier that morning. He had gathered his officers, a squad of equally confused bureaucratic warriors, and returned to the chair. Greta had not moved. She was now eating a sandwich. Slowly. "Analyze her for command signals," one of the lieutenants whispered to the ship AI. The AI replied, "She's eating cucumber and something else I cannot identify, possibly defiance." Another officer leaned in. "She is clearly running a psychological operation. Look at that gaze. It's intimidating." In reality, Greta was just calculating if she had time to go back inside and pee before finishing her tea. But the stare, oh, the stare. In 12 Confederation systems, they would come to call it the blink of doom. It took only 6 seconds. 6 seconds of nonchalant chewing and a gaze that could curdle milk. The General, Admiral Bluth, backed away again. "I have been outranked," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "But by whom, sir?" asked Officer Hrevk, whose entire personality was based on rules and the obsessive collection of alien stamps. "I don't know," Bluth snapped. "But clearly she commands a high-ranking psychological manipulation order, possibly ultra-matriarchal war priesthood." He paused. "Or she's just really good at silence." Meanwhile, Greta finished her sandwich and checked her phone. 1 bar. No signal. Typical. Unbeknownst to her, the Confederation's internal intelligence system had already flagged her. Within minutes, hundreds of reports flooded in. Subject emits non-verbal dominance aura. Possible military strategist, capable of emotional dismantling. Sandwich may be a weapon. To make matters worse, and they did get worse, another group of observers arrived. A fact-finding delegation from planet Vrobnul, whose scientific motto was, "If you don't understand it, run away or worship it." They chose the latter. One of them bowed, full-on forehead to grass. Others followed. A growing circle of reverent silence surrounded Greta's chair. She sighed, loudly. Somewhere, miles above, aboard the orbiting ship Tranquility Debatable, Admiral Bluth ordered a full diplomatic retreat. "We are not equipped for this level of power," Officer Hrevk objected. "She hasn't even said anything this time." "Exactly," Bluth snapped. "That's what makes it worse." Back on Earth, Greta stood up, stretched and muttered to no one in particular, "Time to pee." And just like that, she left, chair and all. The delegation stared at the empty patch of grass. An eerie quiet followed. The kind that only happens after you witness something that absolutely shatters your understanding of the universe. Like finding out the most feared being in the galaxy uses a reusable tea mug. Admiral Bluth did what any self-respecting interstellar official does when confronted with an unexplainable anomaly. He filed a report, a very long one, with 73 footnotes, 2 appendices, and a hand-drawn diagram labeled Aura of Command, Theoretical Radius, E. The report reached the Central Analysis Hub on planet Quarnox 7 within hours. The hub, designed to process entire civilizations' histories in under a minute, immediately experienced what could only be described as a mental hiccup. Its processors froze mid-analysis of Greta's psychological profile and simply displayed the phrase, "Nope." This, of course, set off alarms. Literal ones, with sirens and flashing lights and a small robotic duck that quacked every time a red flag appeared. And oh, there were many red flags. The Confederation decided it needed background information. That meant a full-scale Earth infiltration mission, disguised as a harmless research operation. Step 1, interview her former professors. At the University of Mervendale, not prestigious, not memorable, but adequate, the team found Dr. Lindbaum, Greta's ex-philosophy lecturer, hiding behind a filing cabinet. "She didn't say much," he muttered, clutching a coffee mug like it owed him money. But when she did, it was like someone wrapped your thoughts in barbed wire and handed them back with a smile. She once turned in an essay that just said, "Why not?" No punctuation. I gave her full marks. Next, they sought insight from the village baker, Mr. Alfonso Bibbs. He was busy teaching sourdough techniques to a group of perplexed teenagers when the delegation arrived. "Ah, Greta," he sighed. "Bought a croissant every Thursday. Never smiled. Just stared at the ovens like they'd betrayed her." I respected that. Then came the poodle. Technically, it was Greta's grandmother's poodle, named Maximus Barcus, who had survived 3 house fires, 1 tornado, and a brief but intense political scandal involving a stolen sausage. The team activated a translation collar to understand the dog. It barked once, then turned away dramatically. Translation: I know what she is, but I won't be the one to say it. This only deepened the mystery. Analysts on multiple planets scrambled to create a profile of Greta Lang. Theories emerged. One proposed she was the last in a line of forgotten warlords from the Paleolithic age. Another suggested she was a rogue AI disguised as a teenager. A third posited that she simply didn't care. This last one was dismissed as too terrifying. The bureaucratic machine began to crack. Protocols failed to account for this kind of human. She had no known rank, no government ties, no military history. She had not been genetically engineered, nor trained in psychic warfare. In fact, her greatest recorded achievement, prior to the tea incident, was organizing her bookshelf alphabetically while sleep-deprived. But the incident in Nevada couldn't be denied. Officers began whispering about her in the break rooms of orbital stations. She became a kind of myth, the seated one, the woman of stillness, the commander without orders. And with each retelling, her power grew. In one version, she dismantled a battlecruiser using only sarcasm. In another, she stared down a meteor until it changed trajectory out of embarrassment. Panic began to ripple through the upper echelons of command. On planet Broldock, a council of 12 strategic analysts debated for 7 hours whether Greta's sandwich might have been a symbol of dominance. The youngest among them, fresh from academy, offered a suggestion. Maybe she's just normal? He was immediately reassigned to comet watching duty. At last, the Confederation High Mind issued a statement. Until further notice, all contact with Subject Lang is to be handled via indirect observation. Do not engage. Do not provoke. And above all, do not offer her another chair. At exactly 0742 Galactic Standard Time, a high-ranking Confederate named Vrubnax Threll stumbled upon an internal memo marked unimportant, possibly Earth-related. He opened it out of sheer boredom, which, as history often proves, is when the most devastating errors occur. Inside was a list of unassigned assets on Terra. At the top, Greta Lang. Not classified, not contained, not even properly photographed. There was just a blurry image of her holding a mug and looking vaguely disappointed in the universe. Threll made the mistake of showing it to his assistant. Wait, she's still planet-side, unsupervised. Within minutes, orders were drafted, shredded, redrafted, and fired across 50 different command nodes. The conclusion was unanimous. Greta Lang must be brought in for casual debriefing, a euphemism that translated roughly to, maybe she'll talk to us if we give her snacks. A shuttle was dispatched, sleek, black, over-designed to the point of uselessness, and staffed entirely by specialists in non-coercive voluntary captivation. It landed outside her building at 4 a.m. precisely, the exact time when no one is awake and no decisions should ever be made. They knocked. Greta opened the door in socks, holding a half-eaten biscuit and an expression that suggested she had already lived 3 lives this morning, and none of them were enjoyable. "Miss Lang," the lead agent began, "you've been selected for an exciting opportunity and can I bring my coffee?" She didn't wait for an answer. She went back inside, poured the rest of the pot into a thermos, grabbed her phone and locked the door behind her. Not because she was scared, because she didn't want anyone stealing her plants. The shuttle departed Earth with a faint sense of foreboding clinging to its hull. Aboard the orbital vessel Probable Triumph, Greta was escorted to the command gallery, a room lined with holograms, brass insignias, and a strategic overview map of several hundred star systems. None of it impressed her. They offered her a seat. She chose to lean against the wall. The Admiral of Fleet Command, a slender insectoid figure named Kil Nethar, cleared her throat. "Miss Lang," she said in the tone of someone who had practiced this speech multiple times in the mirror, "you have, through a series of deeply unexpected interactions, been interpreted by several departments as a commanding authority." Greta blinked once. We would therefore like to extend provisional, temporary, semi-symbolic rank designation, purely as a formality. Another blink. Effective immediately. You are now Fleet Adjunct Supreme. Silence. Greta took a sip from her thermos. Is there Wi-Fi? This baffled them. The Admiral turned to her officers. They whispered. Devices were consulted. Signals were boosted. A single green light blinked. Yes, the Admiral replied. As of now, there is. Greta nodded. Cool. Meanwhile, somewhere deep in the ship, an AI assigned to monitor command transitions began to panic. It could not find protocol for command given accidentally to disinterested human. So it did what all good AIs do in moments of uncertainty. It assigned a random command sequence. Unfortunately, it used Greta's phone as a point of control. Within 90 seconds, Greta had, without touching a single alien console, ordered a reallocation of 7 cruisers, cancelled a planetary embargo, and scheduled a diplomatic conference with the worm kingdom of Bleak. She had, in the eyes of the system, become an operational commander. Ah, said an ensign watching the chaos unfold on screen. Her phone just rerouted our flagship. To where? The Admiral demanded. To somewhere called Frank's Pizza and Liquor. Nobody knew what that was, but it became an official rendezvous point. Coordinates locked, orders distributed. Entire fleets began shifting, some confused, others just relieved to have a direction. Greta, still leaning on the wall, scrolled through social media and muttered, "This interface sucks." The Admiral bowed. "We shall fix it." Somewhere in the tangled bureaucratic undergut of the Confederation fleet, nestled between the Department of Interstellar Etiquette Violations and the Office for Emotional Misunderstandings, existed a group so obscure even the janitorial drones forgot their hallway. It was called Documentation Unit 92B, known informally as the Fontuels. Their sole responsibility, format and distribute military manuals. Their singular mistake, allowing a rogue intern named Blibble to upload the entire High Command procedural archive in Comic Sans. Not italic Comic Sans, not even bold, just Comic Sans, the font of madness, the font of doom. So when Greta Lang, now technically Fleet Adjunct Supreme, Interim Earth Sector, tapped her screen and idly opened the command briefing, what stared back at her was a list of critical protocols delivered in the visual equivalent of a clown car crashing into a job interview. She squinted. Is this a joke? Lieutenant Revolk, who had not slept in 4 days and was down to his last functional nerve, leaned over, saw the font, and wept openly. "It is worse than death," he whispered. Greta, shrugging, navigated through 3 sections labeled, "Do not touch this. Okay, fine, but you were warned. And congratulations, you now command everything." Each page was riddled with glowing symbols, animated arrows and footnotes that argued with each other. One even suggested consulting your emotional support nebula before proceeding. She tapped a highlighted button out of sheer curiosity. Somewhere in orbit, a mining fleet rerouted itself toward a volcano. No one stopped her, because by then everyone assumed she knew exactly what she was doing. On deck, Admiral Kil Nethar paced furiously, trying to determine how command had been transferred, why all the ships were now named after fast food items, and whether it was still legal to wear ceremonial boots during an existential collapse. Reports poured in. Sector 12 is requesting clarification on whether Operation Extra Cheese is literal. Ship Taco Supreme just beat its own warp record by 12 seconds, unprovoked. The planetary defense grid is requesting nap time. Each message was marked, authorized by Greta Lang. And she? She was adjusting the screen brightness. "She hasn't read the tactical directives," someone shouted. "No one's read them," someone else replied. "They're in Comic Sans." High Command issued a Level 4 panic directive, which mainly involved screaming into a soundproof room while pretending to review maps. A vote was nearly held to revoke her authority, but it failed, when no one could figure out how to unassign command from her without admitting they never assigned it properly in the first place. Meanwhile, Greta asked where the coffee was. "Section Delta 4, replied a junior officer, trembling. "Can I walk there, or is it one of those zero-G corridors that smells like regret?" "You may walk." She wandered off. The AI assigned to track her movements lost signal when she entered a utility closet, reprogrammed 2 navigation beacons by accident, and re-emerged exactly where she needed to be. This was considered a sign. Some began calling her the Pathwalker. Inside Delta 4, Greta found the coffee machine. It required retinal ID, vocal passcode, and at least 1 diplomatic credential. She looked at it. It beeped. Then it just dispensed coffee, hot, strong, fatal to insectoid species. She took a sip and sighed. "I still don't know what I'm doing," she muttered. And across the ship, 3 tactical officers had simultaneous epiphanies and resigned. By day's end, she had overridden 17 protocols, instated nap breaks across 3 fleets, and introduced a new category in the fleet performance metrics: emotional stability score. She also accidentally sent a ceasefire order to an ongoing border conflict by replying to the wrong message thread with a thumbs-up emoji. The result? Peace. Unintended, inexplicable, but definitive. Admiral Kil Nethar stared at the screen, jaw slack. "Who is she?" an ensign asked. The Admiral didn't blink. "A glitch in the system," she whispered. "A very polite, tea-scented glitch." On the 49th hour of Greta Lang's unintentional command, something truly horrifying happened. Things began to work. Not sort of work, not functioning just well enough to avoid an inquiry work, but really work. Systems flowed, orders executed, whole sections of the fleet operated like a well-oiled machine held together by duct tape, caffeine, and quiet resentment, just as nature intended. The problem? This was deeply offensive to the Confederation's bureaucratic elite. See, the Confederation was built not on speed or clarity, but on tradition, old, creaky, convoluted tradition. You didn't just request a fleet maneuver. You submitted a Form 19ZQ, waited for 3 lunar cycles, then recited an apology poem to the nearest admiral. That was the process. That was civilization, and Greta hadn't followed any of it. Worse still, she didn't even know it existed. At one point, she'd stumbled upon a scheduling panel for interfleet communications. It was designed to take 6 hours to arrange a 30-minute meeting. She looked at it for 10 seconds, sighed, and typed, "This is stupid." That alone triggered a software purge and rebuilt the scheduling system into something simple, functional, understandable by beings who didn't have 6 lungs and a minor degree in calendar philosophy. The shockwaves were immediate. On planet Drelnar, the Ministry of Procedural Standards declared a Level 5 existential crisis and closed for 3 days. On Varnis 8, the official registry of official registries filed a complaint against itself. Meanwhile, back on the probable Triumph, Greta had found a wrench. No one gave it to her. She just picked it up from an open maintenance locker and started tightening something that looked loose. She didn't know what it was, neither did the crew, but it stopped making that horrible whining noise, and now the whole deck felt more stable. This, of course, violated several union regulations. "You can't touch equipment without proper clearance," stammered Technician Froll, nearly vibrating from distress. "I don't have clearance," Greta said, turning the wrench again. "That's exactly why you can't wait. Did that just fix the coolant rattle?" Greta nodded. "I think so." Froll's eye twitched. Word spread. Maintenance crews began following her around with clipboards, watching her poke things and mutter, "That's not supposed to be glowing." When she adjusted a vent angle to reduce airflow noise, a junior engineer fell to his knees and sobbed, "I've been trying to fix that for 4 years." It wasn't long before someone, possibly as a joke, possibly as a prophecy, printed a pamphlet titled "The Lang Adjustments, a practical guide to doing things the obvious way." Within a day, it was circulating on 22 ships and translated into 6 languages, including one spoken only through shoulder shrugs. This all came to a head when a delegation of legacy archivists boarded the ship to assess the damage. They found the ship quieter, cleaner, more efficient, and worst of all, happier. "Morale has increased by 28%, reported one officer, not hiding his confusion. "How?" asked the lead archivist aghast. "She installed nap breaks. And that worked?" "Well, that, and she removed all the motivational posters. Said they made her want to fail out of spite." Back in the command gallery, Greta sat cross-legged on the floor, eating pretzels from a pouch she'd found in a diplomatic gift basket. She wasn't commanding anything at that moment. She was just resting, thinking, waiting for the next weird thing to break. Around her quietly, departments recalibrated, whole networks adjusted, doctrines cracked. Because sometimes, to fix a galaxy-wide tangle of nonsense, all you need is a wrench, a tired woman, and a firm refusal to put up with anything that doesn't make basic, functional sense. The Confederation could tolerate a great many things: minor invasions, the occasional moon theft, even entire planetary systems spontaneously deciding they were now sea creatures. But what it could not tolerate was embarrassment. And Greta Lang had embarrassed them. Repeatedly, without malice, without effort, which frankly made it worse. And so it was decided, in a meeting that lasted precisely 22 minutes and involved 4 arguments about seating arrangements, that she must be put on trial. Not for any crime, exactly. There wasn't a law against fixing things with common sense, yet, but they called it a cognitive integrity assessment, which sounded much more important than, "We don't know what else to do with her." They held the trial on the neutral moon of Draxilian Theta, a place chosen for its lack of distractions and complete absence of taste. The courtroom was a domed chamber filled with floating auditoriums, each populated by species with varying numbers of eyes, limbs, and grudges. Presiding over the hearing was High Arbiter Glan, a being with 17 brains, all of which disagreed with each other regularly. Greta stood in the center. No restraints, no dramatic music, just her, in a hoodie, drinking lukewarm tea from a thermos she had refused to surrender. The prosecution began with a slideshow. "This," the lead prosector announced, "is a chart of standard procedural throughput before subject Lang." A miserable graph appeared, then another, marked Post-Lang Influence, a perfect vertical line labeled Unholy Spike in Output. "Exactly," the prosecutor snapped. "It's too efficient. No oversight, no approvals, entire departments rendered obsolete." The crowd gasped. Somewhere in the back, someone fainted. Next came testimonies. Admiral Bluth appeared via hologram, visibly older and now missing 2 medals. She doesn't yell. She doesn't threaten. She just stares at problems until they fix themselves. It's unnatural. Technician Froll described the wrench incident. "She didn't even ask permission. She just turned the bolt and walked away." Then came Officer Hrevk, clearly rattled. "We offered her a position in the Strategic Oversight Council. She asked if it came with dental and then deleted the meeting invite. She deleted a council invite." A murmur of horror swept the chamber. Finally, Greta was allowed to speak. She didn't. Not at first. She just took another sip of tea, looked around. Then she said calmly, "Your system is broken. I didn't come here to fix it, but it got in my way, so I moved it." 17 of Glan's brains had minor malfunctions. 2 rebooted. "But what are your intentions?" one judge demanded. Greta blinked. "To be left alone. You dismantled protocol across 13 sectors." "I was trying to nap." The silence was so absolute it might have qualified as a vacuum. Then, from the gallery, a single voice spoke. "She solved our cargo delays. We've had stable logistics for the first time in 50 years. I say we let her nap." It was a supply officer, nervous, clearly regretting speaking up. Then another. "Our fleet got 2 weeks of shore leave thanks to her redistribution. I'm with her." And another. She made my workflow make sense. I could finally spend time with my spawn cluster. The momentum shifted. Within moments, the gallery devolved into full argument. For, against, uncertain. One species declared trial by interpretive dance. Denied. Finally, High Arbiter Glan rose, or at least floated taller. We find the subject unquantifiable, it said. Not guilty, not innocent. Simply inconvenient. Greta exhaled. You are free to go. We advise you do so quickly. Greta nodded, took her thermos, walked out. No speeches, no bows, just one woman leaving a courtroom full of aliens, officials and philosophical breakdowns, all wondering how someone could be that powerful without ever actually doing anything particularly dramatic. She didn't ask for a shuttle, didn't wait for protocol. Greta Lang walked out of the courtroom, crossed the sterile spaceport hall, and found a bench by the freight offloading dock. She sat, opened a thermos, drank. The Confederation didn't know what to do with her. No one did. Somewhere, in some security station, someone was probably still tracking her biometrics, filing reports titled "Subject Remains Troublingly Passive." But by then, most systems had learned to just stop interfering. Above her, the stars did what they always do, twinkled in total indifference. Below her, the dock thrummed with the weight of hundreds of tasks being performed by creatures who still believed in tasks. And Greta, now globally recognized as a functional anomaly, was finally alone again, but not for long. A young officer, barely out of training, approached cautiously, as if she might explode from being acknowledged. "Miss Lang?" he said, holding a flimsy datapad with trembling fingers. "I was told to, offer this to you. It's everything. Command codes, strategic assets, planetary clearance. They've decided you should have the option." Greta didn't take the pad. She looked up at him, sipped her coffee and replied, "Tell them I already have everything I want." The officer stood there, confused, as if waiting for a deeper revelation, a motto, a destiny, a reason. But there wasn't one. Just Greta, tired, clear-eyed, grounded, sitting exactly the way she had in Nevada, the same posture, the same look. The officer left, slowly, as if stepping away from something sacred and entirely uninterested in being worshipped. Within weeks, rumors exploded across the Confederation. Some said Greta had declined an empire. Others claimed she had secretly uploaded herself into the military grid and was now commanding it remotely through passive-aggressive scheduling changes. A few fringe theorists insisted she was a myth invented by overworked administrators as a warning. But the truth? She went home, back to her apartment, back to her small kettle, back to the quiet frustration of a toaster that burned everything except bagels. No parades, no plaques. She didn't even tell anyone where she'd been. The world kept turning. Bureaucrats argued. Fleets moved. Admirals retired and warned their successors to never, ever underestimate the seated ones. And occasionally, very occasionally, someone on some ship somewhere would pause, just for a second, and say, "Wait, what would Greta do?" Then they'd laugh, shake their heads, and do something simple, something obvious, something that made sense. Years later, a confused field researcher from planet Rilkton stumbled across Earth's public databases looking for records of Greta Lang. All he found was a grocery list and a half-written note in her calendar that read, "Fix the thing under the sink, again." The researcher archived it under cultural ambiguities. He didn't understand why, but reading it made him feel oddly calm. No war had started. No civilization had fallen. No revolution had been declared. But in the hidden corners of 1,000 dusty archives, somewhere between the lines of star maps and policy memos, one simple truth remained. A woman sat quietly, and nothing was ever quite the same after that.